Thank you for being here with me. My name is Asimoto. I couldn't rename myself in time. Jason just asked me to, but I'll introduce myself in just a moment. If you're here with me, we're going to be looking at 3 different platforms in 45 minutes, which will be kind of a whirlwind. But I'm going to give you an overview and how I've used them in the classroom so that you can have a couple more things on your tool belt as far as tools in the classroom. And so we're going to get started with Edpuzzle, and then we're going to move into Screencastify, and then finally into Flipgrid. So thank you for being with me today. And I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I see that I have 27 now logged in. And let me, perfect. Share my screen with all of you. Hi. All right, so I am going to use Pear Deck as my medium behind this. So if you were in my one of my 2 sessions in the morning, fantastic, you'll get to see it again. If you weren't and you have no idea about what Pear Deck is, you can always leave some feedback to me at the end, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. But if I can have everyone open a new tab, which is joinpd.com, and sign into it by using those 5 letters, WPADH, Warm Pairs Award Determined Highlighters. I see I have one of you in. Great. I'll just give you a moment to log in right now. And if you don't log into Pear Deck, you can always follow along on my screen as well. Okay. So again, go to joinpd.com and type in those 5 letters, WPADH. Fantastic.
Yeah, go ahead and turn it off.
Okay, let's get started. So you should be in joinpd.com and typed in those 5 letters, and I'm just using Pear Deck as the back platform for this so we can kind of interact with one another. During this session, I don't have a moderator, so if you have a question, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask me a question at any time, because I won't be able to follow the chat. So if somebody wants to put in the chat, the joinpd.com and those 5 letters, that would be great for me. But I'm going to start us in what is the 3 different apps that we're smashing today. So we're going to start with Edpuzzle and then move into Screencastify, and then we're going to wrap it up with Flipgrid. And I'm not quite sure why Flipgrid is coming off to the side, but we'll worry about that later. My slideshow is linked here as well as in the notes for the agenda. So if you want a copy of the slideshow to have in your back pocket for years to come, you are welcome to create that and have it in the background. So thank you for Alice for putting that in the chat, and I appreciate it. All right, so let's get started. We're gonna work out a little bit today because we are going to be doing quite a lot within the next 45 minutes. So let's get started. My name is Asimoto. I go by she, her, and hers, and I am the CS coach for Santa Cruz City Schools. I had the wonderful opportunity to be in Merit and CIO, part of Krause Innovation Center over at Foothill College last year, and I am very happy to be here with you. I am a badge girl and a badge queen, so I like to become certified coaches of just about anything I can. And so I spend a lot of my own time doing professional development like you guys are all today. And you can get a hold of me through Twitter or my email or my website. So let's start off with Edpuzzle. We're gonna take off as we look at the first question I'm gonna ask you, which is, my students are visual learners who love YouTube. And I'm gonna ask that you drag that green icon to either agree or disagree. And you should be in the joinpd.com, that tab. And I see a lot of your green little dots moving around. Visual learners who love YouTube. Great, and I see that most of us are on the agree side of it, and I'll show you those responses. So we have a ton of agrees here with your little compasses navigating to it. Perfect, all right. So I felt the same way as an educator, and so what is Edpuzzle? It is free, and there aren't very many free tech tools out there. They're getting more and more as we continue to advance in technology, but this is a way to choose any video from YouTube. You embed it into your own assessment questions or your own annotations, and you can track your students' progress throughout the entire time. So it's a really great way to look at how long is it taking for your students to complete a task, which gives you a lot of data about like how much extra time will they need in the classroom if this was a flipped classroom. So I know a lot of us are doing asynchronous lessons right now with distance learning. We're trying to give our students some time to work independently and then come back as a group. Edpuzzle is a great way to do that because I can use video in my own content and then put it in and have it great. It is for K to 12 public school teachers. So if you are not a K through 12 public school teacher, Edpuzzle's not going to work for you, but there are some other tools later today that I will share with you that will. And okay. So why Edpuzzle is your new best friend. I had the opportunity to meet the CEO of Edpuzzle. It's still a fairly, even though it's been around for years, it's a fairly small company. It's only run by 3 people on a full-time basis. And so it was an educator down in South America, and he thought, I love using video in my classes. How do I track to see if kids actually watch the video I was asking them to? And so that was where this inspiration came from. And it's a way to let students who are various different types of learners and various different types of finishers. Sometimes we have fast finishers, and sometimes the processing is a little slower for some students. And so this allows students to watch videos at their own pace, to pause it whenever they need to. And it holds students accountable for watching the video. It tells you if they got through the entire video, and it also tells you whether they skipped ahead. I actually disable that feature so that I can't skip ahead as a teacher, but it gives me a whole lot of information about how much the student really took in from that. And I can ask assessment questions, or I can annotate defined terms for students throughout. So what you're looking at in the visual image is actually my Edpuzzle, and my content is huge. I have a vast amount of content because I used it on a weekly basis with my students. They love doing this, and so they would ask for more and more. And it was a really good way to engage students, or for my early finishers, to give them a task to do that I didn't really think everybody needed to do, but it gave them more depth of what we were learning about. And so you can see in here that I have very quick little videos or longer videos. I actually included my own Wii videos in these 2 things, which I can upload my own videos. So if I was doing Screencastify, which we'll talk about in a little bit, I can upload that to Edpuzzle and then annotate it so that I have assessments or quiz questions or defining terms for students as they go. And I'm going to get 100% participation because I'm going to know who watched it. So I'm going to reach out to those kids that may not have. So when do we use it? In class or with distance learning, it's great for rotation stations. So in elementary classes or even secondary classes, when we're trying to do a couple different tasks at the same time, I can send some kids off in a breakout group, maybe in Zoom, to do the Edpuzzle, and I can have other kids working on something else at that time. It's wonderful for individualized work. So if I'm doing an asynchronous lesson, this is a great way to do it. Listening comprehension, this is a wonderful resource for any teacher that might want to understand how much of the reading comprehension or take a type of a reading comprehension quiz through Edpuzzle. I can also assign this if I was in the classroom and teaching how we used to teach without distance learning. I might assign this as homework to complement my lesson or to demonstrate other math problems and how to do them so that they're able to do their homework. To introduce new vocabulary or grammar that I want them to know before they come back to class with me, or to prepare for a class discussion. I use this a lot with Socrative different assessments. And so if I was having a lesson where we were all going to have a class discussion, I might have students listen to a video I've already made, ask them questions in that video, and then move forward when we actually have class time together. It's also wonderful to review with. So I can review key unit concepts. I can have a video that helps students study for an exam instead of giving them the document where it has all the things to review. This can be a video which might help other learners. Or if I'm a science teacher, it's a great lab room where I can really demonstrate in my own video how to do a lab so that students can do the lab at their house with the materials that you have. And so how can you view Edpuzzle? There are two ways. One is a classic view, which is students watch the video individually. They work at their own pace. You can export it straight into Google Classroom so that they have it all in one place. And it's, again, perfect for those rotation or flipped classroom models. I can also do it in live mode. So if I'm doing a synchronous lesson with students, I can project it just like I am with Zoom. And students answer from their own devices. And so I'm still getting the kids to interact, but we're all doing it at the same time versus individually taking their time to go through the video. And I give live feedback to spark in-class discussions where I may pause the video, have a class discussion, and then move forward with the rest of the video. So what type of classes can you create? There's also two classes. One is a classic class where students need a login or sign up. And again, Google Classroom integrates really well with this. So it takes all of your Google Classroom roster. The only downside is if you get a new student, you have to refresh that roster. So that's just a thing that has happened to me before where a student who's new to my classroom will say, I don't have access to that. And I'm like, oh gosh, I have to refresh the roster on Edpuzzle. And so they have to use their sign-in to log in and sign up. They track their progress. I, as a teacher, can look at everybody's progress and how they're doing. And it's perfect with if you can't live without videos in your lessons. And I love adding videos to my lessons because it just enriches the content that I'm trying to get to all my students. There's also an open class, which students don't need an account for. And I've seen this used a lot with elementary students who aren't usually using Google Classroom, or maybe they use Seesaw or a different kind of platform. And so they don't need necessarily a log on. I can see the students' progress at that time. And it's perfect for me to do like quick demos or practice. And again, for elementary students, I've used the open classroom where it's not kind of locked down more regularly than in the secondary level.
Erin, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Our school uses Canvas, and I noticed that this Edpuzzle is available to use in our assignments in Canvas, but I couldn't easily find out whether it can the results of what the students are doing can be output to our gradebook, and I was wondering if you.
Ooh, that's a great question. I actually don't know the answer to that. I would look into how the gradebook set up. I used to do it even before Google Classroom had the gradebook integration. Used to just split my screen and take their scores and add them into my gradebook by just splitting my screen and doing it. And it's kind of a pain, but it was worth my time to give them credit for what they were doing. So that's one workaround, but I'm not sure if it integrates with the Canvas gradebook. I know it does with Google. But great question. Okay, so I think as an educator, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's so much out there, and I need to save time, especially in this kind of environment where I'm putting together maybe for the very first time distance learning lesson plans. I don't need to reinvent what every other teacher has done before me. And so I think sharing is caring. Although Teachers Pay Teachers is a wonderful way to resource the things that you have, Teachers Give Teachers is so much better because I just want to share all of my wealth of knowledge with anybody that wants it. It's not about me getting credit. It's just about being a better educator for the students that are in front of us. And if I can do that by giving away all of the knowledge that I have, I'm absolutely willing to do that. And Edpuzzle is behind that theory as well. There are tons of lessons that are already done by teachers that you can just make a copy of and use in your own classroom. So I always look for videos that I'm already gonna use that may have the same kind of content, and then maybe adjust them, tweak them so that they're my personal videos, but using the bulk of the content that's already related or already created for me. For YouTube videos, which I use a lot in my class, I taught secondary English for 14 years before this, and I would use videos all the time to teach content. And YouTube was my best friend, and I would spend hours looking at YouTube videos, and I realized Edpuzzle is going to filter all that for me. So if I was trying to look up a Romeo and Juliet lesson and I found something that was great, I could automatically just upload it into Edpuzzle, and sometimes with questions that had already been done by a teacher that I didn't have to do myself. I can also upload my own videos. So I like to make a lot of Wii videos or Screencastifys that I will upload to Edpuzzle and then add in my own questions, my own annotations, and so forth. And so this is also great for class projects. And I did this often with my students as they created from ad content a student project. And so we talked about ethos, logos, and pathos in my class quite often in all 4 different grade levels. And my job was for them to really show me that they learned what those 3 things were. And so assigning them, find 3 videos out there and then annotate yourself how those show ethos, logos, and pathos was one of my favorite projects that I did with my students because it really gave me a good sense of did they get and understand the content that I was trying to allow them to grapple with. And looking at their student projects and having the students look at each other's projects was a great resource for students who were not as ready with the content for them to really understand what that was talking about. So assigning projects to individuals or groups, creating their own videos to show their understanding with voiceovers, with annotations, with questions within them is a great way to really have students demonstrate their own knowledge. And it has a ton of LMS integrations. So Tim was talking about Canvas, which it totally works with, and Google Classroom, but it also works with Schoology, Moodle, PowerSchool, and Blackboard. And so all of those different LMS integrations are within Edpuzzle. And it's great because Edpuzzle, once you install it, it will automatically in YouTube have a little link that says, do you want this video to be put in Edpuzzle? So I can scroll through YouTube, find a couple of videos, and immediately export them into Edpuzzle. And I see that the chat has a few questions, so I want to make sure that I'm looking at it. Is Teachers Give Teachers a website? Yes. So if you just type in Teachers Give Teachers, there's a plethora of different stuff that you can look at. And it does integrate with the book automatically. So I'm glad, Alice, you looked that up for Tim. Tim, that is the answer to your question. It integrates with your grade book on Canvas.
Thank you.
Perfect. No problem. And again, just unmute yourself if you have a question so that I can make sure I'm answering them at the right time. So there are step-by-step instructions for how to go about Edpuzzle. And if I had an hour with you just to talk about Edpuzzle, I would go through all of them with you. You have a copy of this presentation, or if you haven't made a copy, I'll make sure that you do by the end of this. You can go to edpuzzle.com. It's a really, really easy sign-on. The cool thing about Edpuzzle is that you get a certain amount of bank of how many videos can you create and share out with your students. The more that you send your referral code, so we all work in different districts, if you send out your referral code, like on number 2, I have the DR1K2V, that's my personal referral code. And anytime somebody signs up with that referral code, it gives me 3 extra videos that I can now use with my students. And so I don't ever pay for it. And if you become a coach of Edpuzzle, which is super easy to do, you'll never pay for Edpuzzle again. That is a definite workaround as an educator when you're looking at the big price ticket items. Edpuzzle doesn't cost anything, but it does have a limited amount of videos that you can send out to your students. And the more you share Edpuzzle with other educators, the more storage you get. And so it's great. You connect with your school and department so you can see what other people in your school or within your department, if you're secondary, are doing. And so you can kind of share back and forth. I loved to co-teach, and my co-teacher and I would just share back and forth all the videos that we were doing in each other's classes. So again, we weren't reinventing the wheel as individual educators. We were sharing our knowledge with the amount of students that were in both of our classrooms. And then there is a huge tutorial on how to create your first video lesson that's linked into this step-by-step guide for Edpuzzle 2. And again, I don't have the time to do all of the step-by-step instructions, but if you are piqued, your interest is piqued by looking at what Edpuzzle can do, please follow these instructions and it will help you. And there's a ton of PD for Edpuzzle. So they give away, I love badges, and they give away a lot of badges. And one of the badges is a coach. And some of the other badges are for other different things like flipped learning, Google Tools, tech integration, project-based learning. You can become a badge person just like me if you so wish. And I made a specific tutorial on WeVideo for what I've done in the classroom. So if you want to learn more about Edpuzzle, please go to the edpuzzle.com online PD, or you can sit through my tutorial on how Edpuzzle works and how it worked in my classroom. It is a step-by-step instruction as well as the previous slide. And I'll pause real quick. PD is professional development. Great question. And Tim's saying use my code. So if you need to use Tim's code, that's fine too. I have lots and lots of storage. I am not up for it. If you want to use Tim's as well, it's in the chat for you. All right, so my next question on Pear Deck is, I have students in my class who are falling behind, and I'd like for you to, again, this time, dragging your red check mark to either agree or disagree. Fantastic. And right now I'm just using my phone to watch how you're integrating with Pear Deck. So I don't have to use I'm using 2 devices in this case, but I can see all of you are putting in the icon where it's agree. And so here I see a lot of us who we do have students fall behind, and it's troubling to us as educators. How do I get that kid caught up? And so my response to you is Screencastify. And Screencastify is an easy recording tool that allows out-of-the-box instruction, which I love their kind of prompt and logo for it. It's based with common sense education, making sure that we're giving credit where credit is due. So I always ask teachers to cite where are they finding these images, where are they finding this information, and if it's somebody else's, giving that credit as well. And so what is screencasting? Screencasting is a digital recording of a computer screen output, also known as a video screen capture, and often containing audio narration. And so it's basically you creating your video of either your tab that you have open on your computer or your entire computer screen if you're going to switch and toggle between a couple of different tabs. So it's just basically recording what is on your screen and putting your face on it if you so desire as well. Ooh, did I go too much? No. All right, so Screencastify is a Chrome Web Store extension. And here's my plug to you. Browsers matter. If you are using Firefox or you're using Mozilla or any other type of internet search platform, Safari, you need to get Chrome. And Chrome extensions are a plethora. They're a dime a dozen, but they are so great for education. And so I encourage you to, if you haven't already, please get Chrome as your official browser so that you can get all of these extensions that you would like to. And Screencastify is in my extensions. It's this little icon that's up here. I use it all the time, and I use it for a ton of different reasons. It works on Chromebooks, it works on laptops, it works on desktops. So no matter what kind of device you're using, whether it's as long as it's a computer based, then you're good to go. And Chromebooks, which most of our students have, or they're having access to this next year with distance learning, they have a webcam and they have audio. And those are the only two things that you need to make a Screencastify. So I'm going to show you one tutorial. And so I'm going to be quiet as it plays for you. Oh. Is it not playing for you?
No, it's not.
Okay. Thank you for somebody letting me know that. It is in this link then. If you open it up, it should be linked in there and it should start at a certain time. And I apologize that it's not starting. It is a basic tutorial on how to get started. And so you are welcome to do that on your own. And I've linked in the other two videos that he's referring to. So this is a 3-part series by Screencastify. I always like to put in the actual people that are making the product versus another educator that is trying to showcase it. So these are made by Screencastify to kind of guide you through the steps of how you would do this. So if you're a first-time user and you would like to use Screencastify, watch this video after today. And get the extension. So make sure you're logged into Google Chrome. If you're on a Chromebook, you are already on Chrome. And you're going to go to the Chrome Web Store and search for Screencastify in the extension area. Once you do that, you're going to allow your camera and you're going to allow your video to be shared with Screencastify. And then you're going to choose to save it to your drive. And you don't have to do anything more than that. It's a quick, easy process. Oh, good. The link is playing, so. On some people's. All right. And then you start recording. And I have used this as a teacher to record tons of directions for my students. Often we get students that don't listen the first time we say something, so we repeat ourselves over and over. And especially in an asynchronous environment where we're assigning things where students are going to work independently, a Screencastify with just a couple of ways to navigate, maybe through Google Classroom for the first time, or Canvas, or a myriad of different ways to go through, will really help students be on the same page. And so when you are ready to record, you just click on the extension. It'll be up in your extension bar right next to where you type in whatever web you want to be on. You click the record on the desktop. It's going to count down just like a timer would. And then you start talking and you share either the tab that you want to use or you share your entire screen. And so when you're done, you click stop and it will automatically ask you to name it. And I encourage you to be very careful with the names so that you don't get all scattered on what is what. But once you name it, it goes straight and downloads to either your drive or to your computer. If you're working on a Chromebook, it doesn't have the storage space, so it'll just save it to your drive, which is a huge lifesaver because we don't want all that storage on our computers. And if you want your image on the screen as well, you can follow these instructions, and that's enabling your webcam. So not only will you be talking about what's on your desktop, but your face will be on it too. And I think that in this type of environment, we want to show our faces as much as we can as educators so that our students really get to know us because we're not together in the classroom. And so having my face on that as I'm doing the tutorial and talking through it, I do encourage scripts with Screencastify. I often take much longer in the editing process if I didn't think about what I was going to say before I hit that record button. So I do encourage you to kind of create, even if it's a scant script, what are you going to say in this tutorial, and make sure that you are thinking about it before you get started. Otherwise, the editing process is going to be a nightmare.
What are you editing in?
So you edit directly into Screencastify, and then you save that edit to your drive. Great question. So once you're done, you name it, it's saved in your Google Drive. Depending on the length of your video, it may take a couple of minutes to download. I've had a video take like 20 minutes to download because it was an hour and 15 minutes. And that was doing professional development for teachers in distance learning. So if you want your students to see it, you're gonna share it with them. You can put it in Google Classroom. You can download it to YouTube if you have your own YouTube channel as an educator. And you can do a lot of different ways to kind of share it back out. Or you can take that Screencastify and you can put it in Edpuzzle and ask questions throughout so that students, watch the video tutorial on maybe like how to navigate some new tool that you're using in the classroom, and then have all that data for you as well. So my last question is, some of my students need more time to understand a new topic. And you're gonna take your taco, because we just finished lunch, and you're gonna either say agree or disagree. And again, I see a whole lot of tacos on the agree, and I would agree with you. So that brings me to what we're doing in class. So if I'm using this in distance learning, I'm going to record directions, navigate new tech tools that I would use, really low stakes at first, especially as we integrate tech into the classroom. We don't want to overwhelm students. So no low stakes. I'm not giving a grade to this assignment. Or when I'm absent and we go back to the classroom, this is fantastic to do for sub days. It guarantees that my lesson is going to be taught the way that I wanted it. When I put everything in Google Classroom with a Screencastify of my instructions, and then kids do it, really the person that's in the classroom as the substitute is just a monitor of what's going on in the classroom. So it is super easy for substitutes to use, especially as we move into this new environment. How do students use Screencastify? Instead of presenting the about me, which my own children had to do throughout elementary school, they now made their own Screencastify using objects out of their house and were able to create their own videos. I had my 12th graders make TED Talks, which I actually put into the TED forum, and asked for them to really talk about a subject that they were passionate about. Or they can share their learning. If I'm having students work with manipulatives of like math, and I'm having them do different angles or graphs, I can have them create a video of how they processed it and how they came to the solution. Or they can use Flipgrid. Which brings me to, I can't tell if my students understood the lesson. And again, we have some consensus of agree. So Flipgrid is a great way to see whether students got what you really wanted out of the lesson. This is linked to a quick navigational tool. This is on Ditch That Textbook. And it is everything that you would want to know. It is just linked in there. So whether it's getting started with Flipgrid, how to create an account, or if you're really going to go fancy, all of the things that you can do with Flipgrid as far as different types of activities you might be searching for. So there is a Flipgrid disco library, so you can get crazy if you want to and check out this resource later. This is just an overview of what Flipgrid can do for your class. How do you sign up? Just much like many things, you go to flipgrid.com and /sign up. And you can either sign in with your Google or Microsoft account. You share a little bit about yourself as an educator, and then you click the green account, make an account button, and you are in. Flipgrid's free, which is crazy to me still to this day that it is a free resource. There is an entire book on how to use this in the classroom. So if you need the Educator's Guide to Flipgrid, click on that link and it will send you to all of the different ways that educators have used it. But I'm going to show you how I used it in the classroom. So this is a video on, there we go. This is a video on how to invent a new class. And it is not by me by any means, it's by John. And John had this idea where he wanted kids to really envision what would school look like if they could make it their own. And I think this is great for primary and secondary students because they all have different interests, and sometimes school's not kids' jam and they're not good at school, and they will be the first to admit it. But if they could create a school that is just the way they wanted it, what would that look like? Well, students use this video to kind of prompt them through. And then John asked them to create a Flipgrid, which is them recording themselves. So much like Screencastify, except they're just recording themselves on any device. So it could be on their phone as well. And then they upload it to Flipgrid and they create a selfie. And I did this in my own classroom to have introductions of students. So this is one of my students, Ben, and you can click in the link and watch his Flipgrid video. But I wanted to get to know my students, but I didn't want to go around the room and try to figure that out. And in distance learning, we don't have that opportunity. So I had all of my students make videos of themselves, and this is my old classroom, and they made it in the classroom so you can hear some background noise. I didn't care. I wanted to get to know them. And so I asked just a few questions. What's your name? What do you go by? So if they have different nicknames that they want to go by, or smaller names, like this guy is Benjamin, but he goes by Ben. And so I needed to know that as his educator. And then I asked them, you know, what's your goal for this year? And then is there anything that I need to know personally about you that would help me be your better teacher? And so they responded, and I had a lot of students that year. I had over 200 students do this. And I sent feedback to every single student with my own video, introducing them and welcoming them to my classroom. And it created such a better class environment where I felt the community of our class was really enriched. And then I gave students the opportunity to go in and watch each other's. And so they not only got to learn about who I was and about the classroom, but they got to learn about all their other classmates and their goals and their aspirations and things that they would want others to know about them. So it was a great way to do an intro activity. I did this in the first week of school, and it gave me such a great, better community of class. And I think the kids, as you can see, they make their own selfies and they can decorate them with all these different icons. And so they had a lot of fun with it, and I had a lot of fun getting to know them for the very first time. If you need more ideas on how to use this in the classroom, or you've used Flipgrid before and you want to see what they just did, which is 12 huge upgrades to Flipgrid, it is a completely different platform than it was a couple months ago. So if you used it in March during distance learning and you want to use it again, or you've never used it, it is so much better today than it was yesterday. So there are tons of upgrades that allow so much more interaction with students and more simplified topics, because it was hard to kind of navigate and figure out what code do I put in where, and how do I send that to Google Classroom, or how do I send that to Canvas? It is so much better now. And so you can click on both of those. It will give you more ideas or upgrades if you want to do them on your own time. But it is basically everything got a facelift in Flipgrid, and it is such a better instrument for teachers to use as a tool in their classroom.
Do you use
Okay.
Flipgrid with Zoom? Do you use Flipgrid with Zoom?
So Flipgrid, because the students are creating their own videos, it might be part of my Zoom as an asynchronous part. So I would say, like, this is the Flipgrid, and maybe I'd post it to Google Classroom or Canvas. And it comes with like a little embedded code, so they go straight to where they're supposed to be in Flipgrid. They give permissions just like they normally would. Yes, I can use it. There is an age limit. So like if you're using Flipgrid with younger students, you just have to get consent from parents so that their face can be on it, because there's no way to modify as they're doing it unless they're doing it off camera, which is one of the loopholes that you could choose. But the idea is that they're sharing their information with you and you can see their face. So it would be part of an asynchronous lesson where I'd give them time to go do it and then come back as a whole and maybe watch a few. Great question. I saw another question. Yeah. What is the website for the second video platform? Screencastify. Thank you for answering, Diane. Yeah, and if you can, it doesn't mean that you need to do it right now. I know we have 2 more minutes before you have to switch to another session. But if you can at some point, click on that link and give me feedback as a presenter, I would greatly appreciate it. It's also a way for me to contact you back if you have any questions or concerns or you want more information. And I'm always welcome to do one-on-one Zoom calls. If you want to try one of these 3 things out, I'm happy to do that with you as well.
Could you go back to the first slide so we can copy the slide deck?
Yes, I can actually. I'm going to go to the last slide because your mind has just been blown because I've given you 3 things to talk about. And my slideshow is there at the very end. So you can click on that link and it will copy that slideshow for you to have for all times. And you can do with what you want with it. And watch those videos because they're super helpful.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
Have you ever needed to consider to get the educators level of Edpuzzle, or have you been able to get enough videos just by having people use your code?
Great question. I have never gotten the educators one because I give out my code all the time. And so I have so much storage, I don't even know what to do with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great presentation. I got a lot out of it.
I'm so glad, Tim. Thanks for coming. Yes, and can you get the link to the presentation? Yes. Did you upload your presentation to the Edpuzzle? No, I haven't yet, but it is being recorded. And Jason has a list of all the links. So if you didn't get the link, it is on the agenda. I linked it in last night. And my code is in that deck. So if you are looking through the slide deck and you want to use my code, or Tim's code is in the chat, you can use Tim's code too. I am happy to have you guys do either one. It really is just sharing is caring. So share away. And thank you, everyone.